I became a board member, I really think, growing up, because it's just in my DNA to serve. So I've always been an individual who's interested in serving and just improving wherever I am. So I remember in the town I grew up in North Carolina, being in front of Rose's department store. And so we had these little round cans or whatever containers that had like a little stickers on them that talked about, had American Heart Association logo on them. And all we had to do was go up and down as people were coming in the store to make a donation or give us their change or any donation. And I remember just feeling so thrilled and exhilarated that people were actually doing it. So that propelled me. And what brought it full circle was one of my classmates who was helping with a different purpose. And I found out later that the money that we raised that day was going to service her family because she had a family member who had severe heart disease. So that's the first time I remember vividly how there was a connection between what I was doing and the service involved.
Probably in 1990. Wait a minute, let me change that. I started around 1982, 83, as I go back now. And that was the first nonprofit board I served on. It was Carroll County Infant Mortality Board. That's what I was on. First of all, there is structure, and as it relates to structure, you're a volunteer, true and true, but again, you also have obligations. And it's almost to the extent I used to tell a lot of my colleagues and people I was mentoring, if you're going to serve on a board, do a good job on a board or don't serve on a board. And that means being prepared for board meetings, doing any assignments, understanding what's going on. Sometimes you have to do subcommittee work. So it's really a commitment that you have to follow through on when you serve on a board.
When I moved back to Atlanta, they asked me if I'd be on the juvenile diabetes board in Atlanta, and it was totally different. It was just how much money can you give. So they didn't really work at all. They had directors and all this stuff, so they really just needed their board for money. And so after a couple of years of that, I got tired of that because I didn't feel like I was really making a difference. Anybody can write a check, or most anybody. But it was very dear to me because my son is diabetic. So I did, in all of those cases, those boards, I really was very passionate about it. And I think that's the first thing you need to be. Recruiting for somebody to be on your board was my hardest learning curve because I was on a couple of them, I had no idea, and nobody ever volunteered to tell me. And even though I'd been on the Quilt Museum board before, this time I made sure that do we have a book? What do we do and who does what? All these things, and it made a whole difference.
Yeah. Like the first couple months, I sat, I listened, because everyone there has already been on the board. And so just not coming in, like I started to suggest, don't come in like in a blaze of fire almost. These people have been doing this for probably years before you have, so be patient. Your ideas will be heard. Things still take time. And then I realized that, getting more into owning a business, how the process and flows, you're helping another company, essentially. At the end of the day, even a nonprofit is a company. And so, they have the way they do things, so you can't just change things overnight.
Board leadership too, I learned, and I started to transition out of that, is getting success through others. I learned from one of our leaders, one of our mentors in the firm, when I was running a division in Atlanta. I was responsible for the division in Atlanta, and he always talked about getting success through others. And that was from a business organization, but that I really organized that and used that in boards that I served on or boards that I led, getting success through others, meaning that not being the person who's trying to do all the work. That's the most important thing. You got to get success through others. Serving on boards allowed me to learn how boards operate, how organizations operate. So that goes way, way back. In the first few years, I probably wasn't as swift as I am on boards as today, learning protocol, Robert's rules, how they operate. what your responsibilities are as a board member. That's very important, that you have a responsibility too. Either whether you're a participant or a leader, you have that responsibility.
So every board has some type of culture. So I would say the biggest learning curve is understanding the culture of the board, understanding the varying perspectives that people have who service on that board, and seeing really if their culture aligns with what their mission says in terms of action. So is it something that's on paper only that sounds so great that the board or different members came up with whatever their particular mission is? Does that align with what they do in terms of behaviors and actions?
I love to see things planned and everybody does their part, and you sit back and you go, that was really good.
Teamwork.
That came together. And usually if you empower somebody and they know what you expect of them, and you know what they want, and they know what you want, they'll get a good job done. So I think that's probably the biggest thing.
You really get to see the boards evolve, and to go from an idea on paper to really where you have a functioning organization that has such an impact on someone's life. That's the most rewarding part. Other times with boards, you're able to do things and really make an impact on people's lives. I served on Salvation Army board, for example, and really didn't know the breadth or depth of what they did. And then doing it and making a difference in individuals' lives and seeing it from, the more inner scope of how it works beyond someone ringing a bell out front of Walmart, but really looking at what do they do? Same as the Carroll County Emergency Shelter, working with women who've been in some difficult stage in their life and really not knowing. So when you see how that board really makes a difference in someone's life, that's what it's all about. You can't pay somebody for that because it's a very rewarding experience.
Service is important because it affects every aspect of our lives, even though people may say, well, I do what I need to do for my own little piece of the world in terms of my family, my friends, and those who are in my village, but we really are all connected if you look at that. So it's important to serve, because when you serve, you become more intimately involved and you have more realities that you can see that are revealed in terms of ordinances, laws, and different policies that affect everybody in the community in which you may reside.
Oh, recruit them now. Because everybody my age is getting older, and a lot of these boards don't have any younger people that are interested, or they, you get complacent, so you don't go out and look for somebody to be on the board. Or they're afraid maybe they won't fit in because they're too young. But you need to find passionate people about different things.
I know I was really nervous because I was like, hi, I'm 23 years old sitting on a board for a great foundation that is helping so many women. But I was like, what? At the same time, I was like, why was I picked? What do they see in me? And so I was nervous about that. But just if they're coming to you, have the confidence that they see something in you.
In many cases, it's not the same as when I came along, where you would just lift your hand and say, yeah, let me help. So it's more about the initiative of younger people to be able to say, I want to be part of this. I want to control my destiny in my community. That's why I serve on boards, but be more willing to jump in and say, here I am. Hey, I'm willing to work. What can I do? Because what I see more of with the newer boards is they can do the work, and that's no deflection on them, but most of the time it's more when you have to ask those folks into the program. Whereas when my coming of age, you were seeking opportunities. You look at civic clubs, for example. I mean, the difference today and what it was when I started as a young businessman, civic clubs were the way. I mean, you found civic clubs. Today, we're pulling people in, trying to find them. So my advice would be this: if you really want to make a difference in your community, you want to direct how your community ends up, be engaged, stay engaged, jump in.
I think if there was anything, I wouldn't say I could do differently, but something that I believe I could have enhanced is being more of a staunch advocate for those that we say that we are serving. I think that is so important to do that and realize that we need to always self-evaluate as well as board evaluate, regardless of what the activity is, what the event may be, what the situation may be. Are we truly serving as our mission, our statement, our values say for that particular population, that individual, that organization?